Well, Gary, round 6, another win over Geelong this time. Our first win at the Cattery since 2010, so a great achievement and good to get the monkey off the back in a lot of ways. And 5 points the final margin, moves us to 4-1 for the season, which is hard to complain about, but still probably fair to say that we're playing some patchy footy. And there's certainly probably some aspects of the game from Saturday which you might not have been overly impressed with. Yeah,
look, that's true, Sam, and obviously as a coach you're never satisfied, really. Again, we keep talking about our form stacking up okay because Werribee have continued on their merry way, so to speak, and they're the only side that's beaten us. So for us to reach that consistency, as you said, it's going to take a little bit of time because we've just had a massive amount of change and we just keep consistently losing our star players. So that's one negative, but the positive is that guys have come in and been able to perform. So, as you said, we hadn't won down at Geelong for quite some time. So, inconsistent, efficient, really accurate in the first half, but our offensive side of our game was really positive, but our defensive side of our game in the first half was ridiculous, really. Like, I think they had 24 inside 50s for 20 scoring shots. Now, you're not going to win too many games if you continually leak like that, so that's an area where we need to improve. Having said that, the second half we were much better, and I thought our team defence was better. Our work rate, both offensively and defensively, was better. We obviously got some deep entries, and considering the game really was in the balance till probably about the 24, 25 minute mark, to then kick away by 4 goals and get what at that stage looked like an unassailable lead. But the disappointing thing was to allow 3 goals in virtually time on. No one knows how long the game's going to go for, but we can't afford or allow opposition teams to just get easy goals, and they got one after the siren, but our boys were fully aware after the game in our quick debrief that that wasn't good enough.
As you said, it's 2 weeks in a row now that we've sort of lapsed late in the game. So have you been able to sort of put a finger on the reasons behind that? Is it more of a case of just maybe switching off mentally when the boys think the game might be in the bag?
Well, I certainly hope that's not the case. If you go through the goals, there's 5 that have been scored basically in time on in the last 2 games, and one was a centre clearance, which we couldn't do much about. The second one against Casey late was really our inability to plug, I guess, the dangerous space that was in front of leading forwards. So that's poor from both our defence and our mids that have to get back and help one another out from a team defence point of view. Against Geelong, it was purely and simply our ball security, as I call it. So we had opportunities to take clean possession, but we fumbled and bumbled, and of course then once the ball gets outside, that particular player who's bumbled and fumbled, well, of course they get some easy play. And what the other goal that was really on the siren was really about our midfielders not working deep enough to cut off that little short angle 45 kick. A decision to go across goal, the decision was right, it was just the execution wasn't the right thing. So I'm always on about the players making sure they make the right decisions, but then of course it's actually how you then make that decision, execution, and obviously the disposal in a lot of cases has got to be clean, got to be precise, and it's also got to be effective. So the exciting thing is that they're all things that we can do something about and work on, and that's what we'll intend to do as the year gets long.
2 senior guys in Toby Pinwell and Nathan Batsanis really stepped up to the plate this week, particularly after that late withdrawal of Chris Kane. Could you maybe just touch on the importance of those 2 guys to the side?
Well, when you consider who's out at the minute, as you mentioned, Chris being a late withdrawal, and of course Jimmy Magna not being able to get up because of his problems, so they become super important in how experience is actually played with. And Toby's a wonderful player, as we know, and a great leader, and of course he would have been slightly bemused, I guess, about his lessening of an impact on the game the week before against Casey, but he certainly more than made up for it, and I thought he was terrific. And Nathan Batsanis has been, I think, our most consistent midfielder, along with Dan Toman. So Nathan's a wonderful player in that he works really hard, spreads well, uses the ball well, and of course the impressive thing for me this year has just been about how hard he's worked when we don't have the ball, i.e. tackles, and he had a team-high 12 tackles against Williamstown a couple of weeks ago. So they're vital, and if they step up and then other younger guys who come into the midfield can step up, then that lightens the load and it makes it a bit easier to cover the losses of both Kane and Magna.
And we're trying something different this week as part of our review. We have a fan question that's come through on our Facebook page from Andrew Chara. And firstly, he says he'd like to congratulate yourself on embracing the Borough identity and contributing to the wonderful culture, which is fantastic. And his question is, how difficult is it planning for clubs with large numbers of AFL-listed players? Do you have to watch both their VFL and AFL sides as part of your planning process?
Yeah, that's a good question, Andrew, and certainly we try to, because of obviously we're not sure as to how much planning you can do, because as you quite rightly mentioned, it does change a lot from week to week. As an example, the week before against Casey, we planned for Gawn to have a big impact on the game, Jamar the same, but they were both negated. But of course then we saw that Jack Watts had to come back to the VFL, and Cam Pedersen was another one, although he was a late call-up for obviously Melbourne's senior side. And this week we'd planned that Dawson Simpson would have a fair say in the ruck, and of course Hall and Smith, who's been playing a fair bit of VFL this year. Both of them were late withdrawals and non-selection, so we've got to make sure that what we do is scout and make sure our guys are fully aware that they will be playing and go in with the mindset that they will. But if they don't, then someone else will obviously be filling that position. And of course, they can do just as good a job. So we always plan for the what-ifs in our caper, because we have to make sure that we're accurate enough with what we give the guys.
And so North Ballarat next, they've been a bit of an enigma this season in a lot of ways. They're not really sure sort of how they're lining up at this particular point in time. As we've touched on, you have to plan for a bit of VFL analysis and AFL analysis. So what's on the agenda for this week?
Well, we just got to bring as much of what we brought last week to the table, but of course do it for longer periods of time. And we're still working on a lot of refinements within our game plan and game style, and we can't underestimate any opposition. And we know Jared Fitzgerald is a wonderful coach, and of course he always gets his side up to play really well against us. So we just got to go in with the mindset and be fully aware that if we've got opposition in a position where they are potentially behind, then we've got to make sure that we keep the foot on the throat and don't let that be in any way, shape or form that the momentum changes because of what we've done. It's got to be what the opposition do to try and get back in the game. So we respect North Ballarat a lot, and we've just got to make sure that we continue to work on the things that we want to do to make us a good side and continue our winning momentum.
Gary, thanks for your time again on Borough TV.
Thanks, Sam.